This is the brand new Michelin Pilot Sport S5 and I finally get to drive it. Not only do I get to drive it, but I get to compare it against what I'm sitting on, the Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R. So that should be a really fascinating benchmark to see where the new S5 really sits in terms of performance. Now, the Michelin Pilot Sport S5 started life as the Pilot Sport 4S replacement. And naturally, Michelin wanted to better that, what is still one of the best ultra high performance summer tires in the market. They just wanted more of everything. Make the Pilot Sport 4S just better, but specifically, they focused very much on steering reaction, wet grip, and noise. Now, steering reaction was pretty much my only negative of the 4S, so it's something I'm super excited to find out whether the S5 has really improved. Now, as this is my test vehicle, the brand new AMG GT, naturally, as it's AMG, Michelin and AMG have worked really hard to further tune the S5 to make it perfect for this vehicle. It took 3 years of co-development with Michelin and AMG. There were 25 different specs for the front axle, 20 for the rear axle. And the work that goes into this project has been absolutely fascinating. So fascinating, in fact, we'll be interviewing the Michelin AMG test driver to really find out what went into this PSS5 to make it perfect for the vehicle. It's really worth watching, so before we drive, let's get into the interview. So this is obviously a pretty serious car. What are AMG like really focusing on from this, the new PSS5?
AMG, they are expecting from us to give them the best handling, soft handling, but also max handling and wet performance as they can get. So they are always pushing us toward all these three directions together. 3 different directions.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get everything into one tire, I'd imagine.
Exactly.
One of the tricks Michelin used to achieve this is multiple compounds per tire, with the front tire having 3 separate compounds and the rear tire having 4 different compounds in order to give the ultimate grip in all conditions.
Okay, so starting with soft handling, that's not a term I often use on the channel. So what is soft handling and what do AMG want from this soft handling test? Because you said soft handling to them is the first criteria they really dig into.
Yes, soft handling is 70% of my job because this is where I roughly sort out a lot of unmatching combinations.
Okay, quickly, what is soft handling? It's not a term I've used before on the channel. I've called it sub-limit handling before, but basically it's everything that goes into a tire that you just don't think about. And because this is a bespoke OE project, this tire is meant to go with this exact car, you can really tune the tiny little things that make your quality of experience so much higher. So for example, in soft handling, which Pierre said it was 70% of his life, the first thing he looks for is, does the car go straight? Does it track straight? Does the car make you think about constantly where you're going? Or can you just let go of the steering wheel and just the car just goes where you expect it to go? Because that's something that's very exhausting when driving if you have to make lots of small corrections. The next thing is the dead zone in the center of the steering. You might think for a performance car like this, you don't want any dead zone. You want the car to react instantly. But again, that's something that's extremely draining to drive and not a very pleasant experience unless you're in a race car where you're 100% focused 100% of the time. So AMG, they concede there has to be a dead spot, but they want it to be as small as possible. And this is lovely and small, very small steering inputs, and I've got quite a lot of steering. The next thing they're working on is, how does the steering feel build up with the reaction of the car? So once you're out of that dead spot and the steering weights up, does the car turn in a manner that makes sense and is equal to the steering feedback? And again, they've done a very good job. I'm just going to keep saying they've done a good job because they have. You don't really have to think about what you're doing. It's just, I put this much steering in at this speed and the car's just going to go there, which is fabulous. All of this is done at 100 kph, by the way. Next, they're looking at the type of steering input you put in. That is, if you're putting a quick square reaction in where you're going straight, does the car react in a square manner? So if I'm asking for a lot of steering force very quickly and then straightening up, does the car give me that very quickly and then straighten up very quickly? Or is there like residual instability as the car like settles around on the tire and the sidewall? And it's something I talk about a lot. But with this OE program, with the focus AMG and Michelin have put on this, you can just tell it's like everything's glued together with super glue. It's fabulous. They then perhaps look at higher speed lane changes. loads of other little nuances with the steering, and all of this is at 100 kph. Then they do it all again at 120 kph. Then Pierre does another 3 laps at 160 kph, and then he does some laps at up to 240 kph. And then once that's done, he then does another lap at 100 kph. The tyres have got hot, the pressures have built, you've got another 10 psi, a bar of pressure in the tyre, and then he checks everything again, because AMG are really big on having the car react stably and predictably, even when you've been driving hard and your tyre pressures are well over spec. The AMG still want the combination to be this amazingly predictable and safe and balanced combination. So that's a crazy amount of work. And then only then, when he's found a combination he likes, then he will take it through to max handling. So this is kind of the in-depth work that you just don't think exists. But with this kind of project, you can really fine-tune all these small factors to ensure you have the best driving experience possible. Okay, so we've already touched upon in the video that you've done a lot of work for AMG. It was a 3-year project. You've done how many? 6 loops?
Yeah.
Yeah, so does that mean AMG give you the final car to start with, and then you get to keep the car, or how does AMG getting this car to you work?
This development between car and tire, it goes along together, meaning that the tires are already there in the very early stages of the car project.
So even like pre-production prototype, you're using the test mule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I guess that means the vehicle, between the test mule and what we have here, the vehicle's changed quite a lot, and so have the tires.
Yeah, the vehicle changed quite a lot. The vehicle chassis engineer need tires that already working to bring the car to another level, yeah. And then we need the new tire to bring the,
it's you're A, B, C, D, E, you're like chasing each other.
Exactly.
So on an average development loop, you're testing, 4 or 5 different front axles and 4 or 5 different rear axle patterns.
Yep.
And you don't know anything about the tires, apart from the letters.
Yes, it's important if you want the test to be as objective as it could be. Yeah. That you don't know what you're testing, so that your result is a clear,
unbiased. You've got no preconceptions of what should feel like what. Okay, so when you're testing, you've got all these combinations, A, B, C, D, E, for example. So that's 25 combinations of front and rear axle. Do you just test all of them in every test, or how do you do your program?
Okay, in fact, we use the soft handling test as a key test to get rid of combinations, so that at the end of the soft handling, we still have only 1 or 2 combinations to test on the other performance. And then we are on the soft handling. We don't drive all 25 combinations, because we have the cars only for 2 days. Sometimes prototypes are really
in high demand. I'd imagine there's not many of them, and like everyone wants to use them. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the idea is we start with testing all the rear axles, because we know by experience that the rear axle is really key for soft handling performance. So we test with only 1 front type.
Chosen by you or the designer, or
chosen by the designers. We test all the rear and decide which one is the best. Then once we have tested and chosen 1 rear spec, with this spec we test all the fronts we have and trying to find the best combination.
And so this was a long project, 3 years, lots of set. AMG obviously are asking for everything from the tire. They want more of everything. Were there any challenges with this project?
On this project, there was a quite difficult challenge to tackle, was to get a good wet handling behavior without losing the good dry handling behavior. Because at one point we had a really good soft and max handling performance on dry, but on the wet we had the balance which was making sense, but the transition between adherence and drift was a bit too sudden, and it makes the car a bit difficult to drive. It's very important for our customer to have easy to drive behavior, even when you reach the limit, and even if you drift somehow, and this was quite hard to get.
So it's another case of the car manufacturer asking for literally everything. We want it to be very fast in the dry, amazing quick steering position, but also it's got to be easy to drive in the wet, which is 2 things that ordinarily don't go that well together.
Yep.
Plus it's over 500 horsepower and rear bias all-wheel drive system. So Yeah, that must have been quite a challenge. Okay, well, I think hopefully now I get a chance to finally drive it. So thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
I pride myself, I've been doing this job a long time, I pride myself on my ability to get on top of any car and track and tyre combination very, very quickly, usually within a lap or two. But let me tell you, I don't know anything about this AMG GT. I've not read anything about it. I don't even know how much power it's got. But what I can tell you is it's very, very, very fast. It must be towards 600 horsepower. It sits so flat and it just drives beautifully. So good job, AMG. Now the tyre, the Michelin Pilot Sport S5, the tyre I've been waiting to drive on for what seems like forever. It has not disappointed. Just off center, it is so quick and reactive. I know this is something AMG have worked on, but it was one of the original design goals of the PSS5. It just turns super sharply, digs in, and everything just sits beautifully. The braking is outstanding. This car does have the big carbon ceramic discs, but you can just rely on the brakes. And I don't know what generation of ABS unit this is, but I'm going to do some braking data to see what peak deceleration G I get, because that feels like a semi-slick almost. The braking's so good, and it's stable lap after lap, and everything just works really, really nicely. Obviously, both tyres have got multiple compounds on, and I have done a lot of laps on this one set of PSS5s in the dry, and this circuit is an absolute front left tyre killer. And the front left tyre, the amount of laps I've done, the tyre should be absolutely destroyed. But the outer shoulder, especially where there's that extra wear strip, it still looks good. Michelin, what have you done with this tyre? Michelin and AMG, sorry, I should say, because this is a partnership of the PSS5. But I know this is giving me so much hope for the aftermarket version, the PS4 S replacement, when that comes to market, because this thing is wonderful. Everything about it is just fantastic in dry handling. Now, I did switch to the Cup 2Rs, and like everything again just starts to feel a lot tighter. Once you're off center, I'd say the dead spot was broadly similar. I didn't dig into that too much, but once you're off axis, it turns even quicker. I wouldn't say it has any more feedback than the PSS5, but it was just the PSS5, but a little bit extra in the dry. And the lap time was, I think, 3.5 seconds quicker across the lap. So a significant step up in lap time for the Cup 2R. But this is why AMG selected the Cup 2R, because the Cup 2 isn't a big enough gap over the PSS5, which is a big hint on things to come, right? That seems to me like a very good thing. Actually, when I found out the Cup 2R was the option and not the Cup 2 on this AMG GT, I kind of laughed to myself. I was like, this is the base AMG GT. That's way too much tyre for the car, but it's not. The car handles it, the tyre handles it, the combination is wonderful. If you plan to use your AMG GT on track, honestly, you don't need the Cup 2R. The PSS5 is that good, but the Cup 2R is going to bring you more speed and save your road tyres. So now we've found out what this package is like in the dry, let's move across to the wet, because as we touched on in the interview, a tyre that's very, very good in the dry is often a little bit difficult in the wet. So let's go see how that balances out. Now in the wet, admittedly, I don't have a competitor tyre to benchmark against. I only have the Cup 2R, and that's 10 seconds a lap slower, as it probably should be because it aquaplanes everywhere. However, this tyre, I know this circuit very well. This tyre feels very good in the wet considering how good it is in the dry, and the lap times reflect that. It's quick around this lap, but again, this car is very fast. One thing I was mighty impressed with, now they said, as we said in the interview, the rear axle stability in the wet was really hard to manage with the exceptional dry performance. It's something Michelin worked on very heavily, and until the very last minute they were changing compounds on the rear axle. And my gosh, so I test with DSE off, with all the traction systems off. However, my VBox data logger cord turned the systems on, so I did a lap with the systems on, and it was tuned exceptionally well. It was almost unnoticeable. Like I said, with the ABS and the braking, I'm not sure what level of electronics or what generation this ABS controller is and the systems are, but it's way ahead of almost anything else I've ever driven. So that's impressive. And the work AMG and Michelin have done together to make it work together is outstanding. But anyway, the PSS5, like in the dry, the tyre was pretty much everything you wanted. There was almost no hydroplaning except when we get to the end of the straight going very fast, because this is an all-wheel drive vehicle. And the steering was light and crisp, and when it started sliding, it was super easy to catch, even with this all-wheel drive setup, which makes drifting a little bit harder. It was entirely possible to have quite a lot of fun with this car. So again, I'm very impressed with both the package of AMG and Michelin, because the work together has paid off. One thing I didn't know when I was doing the test, otherwise I would have done the test, everything, but if you buy one of these, good tip, if you hold down both the paddles for a couple of seconds with everything off, you get a drift mode, rear wheel drive only, which is amazing fun. Good on you, AMG. Wish I'd known that existed a little bit earlier, because I probably would have tested like that. But like I said, the Cup 2R was about 10 seconds slower, and that was mostly hydroplaning. When it was in contact with the road, I'm not saying it was the most easiest or graceful package, but considering what the tyre's intended for, I think it did a really good job. But we test at 1 mil water depth, almost 0.8 to 1 mil across this circuit, which is like driving in a heavy storm. And if you're expecting a tyre like the Cup 2R to do exceptionally well in a heavy storm, you're going to be mistaken. But once it was warm, if it's in contact with the surface, you have a surprisingly large amount of grip. So both these tyres have been very good in the dry and wet. We've already talked about the steering reaction and soft handling. I need to gather my thoughts and then we'll conclude this little test. What's a tyre, what a car? Now, I have actually done a little bit of research into this car, and today, the day I'm filming this conclusion, the AMG GT Pro has just been announced. So AMG, if you want to do something with that, please, I'd love it. I haven't seen, like, the natural comparison for this car is it beating a 911? And I think it would be super, super close back to back. I did Google it and I don't think anyone's done it. But anyway, this tyre, the thing you want to know about this tyre, I'm sure, is when can you buy this in aftermarket? Well, I'm so sorry to say, unless you're one of the few lucky people that can afford something like an AMG GT or one of the other fitments, the OE fitments this tyre exists on, we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer.
And if you are one of the lucky few that have the ability to buy this tyre, make sure you look for the OE marking, in this case MO1, which is the proof of the hard work. The MO1 marking shows that this tyre has been tailor-made exclusively for the car, and that Mercedes AMG approves it.
The Michelin Pilot Sport 4S is still 6 or 7 years later one of the best in the segment, and this is going to move things on. This is going to be worth the wait. If you want to come and nerd out about tyres with other tyre enthusiasts, come and join us on Reddit. Obviously, you can ask questions in the comments below. Reddit is linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, safe motoring.